Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third Recover Your Spark and Mental Health live clinic. Delighted to be joined by Neil and Juliet today. It's really exciting. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Zoe Clues. I'm a hypnotherapist. I specialise in complex PTSD, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And why are we doing this? Well, we know that a lot of people are struggling with their mental health. Most of us have been under chronic and unrelenting stress for the last year. So we're coming to year anniversary now. We wanted to do something to help. We know that NHS waiting lists for mental health are very long, and we know that a lot of people can't afford therapy at the moment. So we wanted to help where we could and support where we can. And we wanted to acknowledge what's going on for people. And over to you, Neil.
Good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm Neil Shah. I'm Chief De-Stressing Officer at the Stress Man Society, which is a non-profit organisation I set up 20 years ago. I also run a research and consultancy business called International Wellbeing Insights. And like Zoe, I got on board with the recovery campaign and the Recover Your Spark mental health clinics, primarily because we can see how much people are suffering. From a mental and emotional perspective, what's happened over the last year is unprecedented. And the double whammy of not only us having more stress and pressure than ever before, but most of our coping mechanisms have been taken away from us. You can't go to the gym, you can't go on holiday, you can't meet a friend for a drink, you can't go to the football. There's a growing list of things that we can't do. And as much as there is an end in sight, I think it's really important that we consider what can we do to increase our resilience to cope with these uncertain, complex, scary and fear-filled times, because there's a lot of fear and anxiety that has been created by what's happened. So essentially what I say to all of you, thank you for tuning in. Never fear, Neil, Zoe and Juliet are here, and we're here to listen to your questions and do our best to answer them. And we have a new face. Welcome,
yeah, it's so exciting.
Hey.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. As you know, I'm Juliet Hollingsworth. I'm a hypnotherapist like Zoe. In a normal world, I'd say I'm mostly working with anxiety, just generalized anxiety. It's changed a lot over the past year, and I'm helping more and more people with anxiety really as a result of what's been going on over the past year. So difficult for people to be recovering from anxiety in a way that we ordinarily would. And people are doing so much work on themselves, one-to-one with private therapists like us, and then they're ready to go out and kind of hit the big wide world, and they can't, and that's a massive problem. So for me, clinics like this are so important, and all kinds of different things that organizations like this are doing to just help people once they've done so much work and all the work that they can in the current climate.
Thank you, Juliet. Well, thank you so much for coming on board. So Zoe, let me ask you, what's been going on in the world this week? And particularly Zoe and Juliet, you are working on the front line, you're dealing with people. What kind of things have you seen? What's come up? Because obviously there's been a lot happening in the news. Every week we get together and something big has happened. So what's going on this week?
I know, it's funny, I was talking about a friend of mine messaged me, they're like, it's gone up a notch again. And it's kind of like every single week it seems to get more intense at the moment. And it feels like we're in such a pressure cooker situation. So one of the things I always say with mental health is that nothing that isn't, things that aren't acknowledged or honoured, they can't heal. It's kind of, that's one of the main things in my practice that I work with, like really acknowledging and honouring what's gone on. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge and honour what's happened. We had the tragic loss of a young lady, which has obviously triggered an enormous amount of things for people and for women and for men actually as well. And it's, a really heartbreaking situation. So this has happened. And, a lot of people have been talking to me about that and reaching out to me about that. And we also have the incoming, I think we're coming up to the third review, aren't we, of the bill that will affect whether or not we can protest, amongst other things. Now, this is causing a lot of fear for people, different elements of fear. I mean, a lot of people feel like they're losing control. A lot of people feel very unsafe. And yeah, you know, we've been in an environment of fear. I mean, I think going back to what Juliet said, I think it's a really important point. You know, when I work with clients with anxiety all the time, and as we help them to recover from anxiety, one of the things that one of the biggest healing parts of recovery is like, go out and live. You know, now you can go out and live, go out and engage in life, engaging in life and getting out of that kind of introversion in your head about anxiety, what's wrong with you, all that stuff. That's what's been truncated, that's what's been taken away. So we're just having to rely very, very heavily on self-care all the time, and connecting with people like this digitally. But there is this ability to be able to go out and live and engage and connect with the world that has been removed from us, that is preventing us from being able to heal fully, grieve fully, work things out, process stuff, because we can't see other people and we can't do those things. So it's you know, it's difficult. We're having to dig extremely deep.
I just want to pick up on this because, and you know, one of my big concerns is under the UN Declaration of Human Rights, there are certain human rights, inalienable human rights, that we are granted as sovereign beings. The right to travel, the right to work, the right to mix, the right to protest, the right to express yourself. Now, obviously, this is not the time or the place to get into a debate of whether it was right or wrong to take those away. There was extraordinary circumstances and situations that led to those being taken away, but they are there for a reason.
Yeah,
They're there because they are required for a human being to flourish, to have well-being, to have happiness, to have kind of the core factors that are allow us to fully express ourselves. Yeah, obviously the decision was made to take them away, but for any period of time there will be consequences. This has been almost a year, and I think this is obviously now what we're starting to see as, you know, we're getting challenge upon challenge. And you know, with that in mind, so Juliet, you talked about anxiety. What do you think is the correlation between the fact that you know, our basic human rights have been impacted for the reasons we've already expressed? How is that connected back to people experiencing anxiety?
I think there's fear everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's fear, which has just been increased with the tragic situation with Sarah Everard. You know, if you weren't scared already and you're female, you're probably now scared. Just terrified through media, really, media headlines. People are, fear coming from everywhere, you know, fear of catching the virus, fear of not being allowed out, fear of people not wearing masks, fear of having to wear a mask, fear of seeing someone in a mask. It doesn't matter where people's opinions lie in the kind of spectrum of opinions, there's fear being felt. And usually we're able to go out and do things that are fun, and the more fun we're having, the more we're laughing. And I was kind of thinking about this the other day, how if you have someone who's got stable mental health, you know, stable, I don't know if that's the right word, but what would be considered good mental health, those people aren't necessarily jumping around with joy all of the time.
yeah,
but having that stable mental health gives them the ability to go and do things that bring them joy. So you might easily be able to go and meet a group of friends, and that will bring you joy. Or you could easily go and spend the day, I don't know, at a theme park, and that would bring you joy. And so generally, maybe you've got a very kind of stable mood, but then every now and then you do something that's great fun. People who have more challenging, you know, they have challenges with their mental health, they might not necessarily have any different mood for a lot of the time, but they find it really difficult to go and do a lot of those things that bring joy. So there's very few joyful moments, and then the anxiety, you know, they start to overthink things, and anxiety just gets worse and worse. But when all of you know, us people with kind of what's considered good mental health can't go and do all of those fun things, then we start to feel those more kind of down feelings, and then the anxious thinking starts, and then you spend time reading more, and then you realize more's been taken away, there's less you can do, and then it starts to become a concern, you know. But it's, you know, it's going on holiday that makes me feel happy, it's that gives me those fun moments, it's going and doing, you know, whatever it is that we can't do that makes you feel happy. And then the anxiety just gets worse and worse. So the more that's taken away, the harder it is to feel happy or feel happiness or have moments of happiness, and the anxious thoughts become more and more common in your own mind, and the anxiety worsens.
Thank you, Julia. So what questions do we have this week, Zoe?
Well, we have quite a few. Okay, so the first one we have, so let's look at these. Hi, I'm a 37-year-old female. I went through some trauma 6 years ago. I'm sorry. And the difficult thing with trauma is, as we all know, is that the subconscious mind doesn't understand time, so it holds on to that and thinks it's like a second ago. Hence, that's why we get such powerful triggers. I gained a huge amount of weight. Understandable. Also, we will put on weight to protect ourselves. As part of my self-destruction back of it. Now, I also want to jump in there and say we call it, what will show up as self-destruction, as what we call self-sabotage, is often actually, it will show up consciously as self-destruction, self-sabotage. It's usually self-protection from a subconscious point of view. So it's good to reframe that straight away, because otherwise just more judgment on yourself. Wasn't able to walk much because I was so heavy and in chronic pain. I've managed to lose 10 stone. Well done. Well done for that. Give yourself, round of applause for that. We've got to champion ourselves when we do difficult stuff. Losing 10 stone is not easy. Losing stone isn't easy, actually, to be honest. Maybe more in the last 3 years. I have so much excess skin. No matter how much exercise I do or don't eat, I still look massive. I'm so embarrassed, but it still makes me look huge. I've got no confidence because of it. I feel so ashamed when people meet me for the first time because I look so awful. I'm sure you don't. We're also harsh on ourselves. Not sure if I'll have the confidence to start a relationship with anyone because of it. I used to be a dancer too. I feel too ashamed to go back to it, as worried about judgment from what I was to what I am. I'm working hard to lose more. No matter what I do, I'm still huge. Is there anything I can do for my self-esteem? Yes, there's so much you can do. And first of all, what I can hear in that message is the persecutory superego going absolutely mental on you. We have, when we've gone through trauma, the part of us, our superego, which is there actually just to give us a conscious, make sure we don't harm other people, don't harm ourselves. It kind of gets enmeshed with the trauma, and then it becomes really vicious, especially if our parents were critical and weren't nurturing. Then we can have this really persecutory superego that can end up attacking you all the time, and whatever it attacks us for, we end up doing more. We end up going to the binge guilt punishment cycle. So I want you to I think the first step with this would be to just really start working with that inner critic, superego, monkey on the back, whatever you want to call it, and recognize you've done some huge things here. You went through some really horrible trauma. You gained weight, you lost weight. You've had some wins, and you've had some real setbacks. And I want you to start just being really, really kind to yourself, because the more you attack yourself, the less you'll get to where you want to be. Nobody benefits from you beating yourself up, not a single person as well, not you, not anyone else. And I think that the way we become strong, the way we get to where we want to be, is through being kind to ourselves, even if we're really alien and really horrible. First of all, you can be a dancer again. Let's not limit ourselves with what we can do. If that's what you want, if you have a desire to do that, then of course you can dance again. And it sounds like you talk about shame. Toxic shame is the thing that pins us to the floor. We say that fear is what stops us, but you can even push through paralyzing fear sometimes. What really is difficult to get up from is toxic shame. So healing the trauma, working on the trauma, being kind to yourself, telling the inner critic to F off. What I always say is, not today, Satan. It's quite a good thing to say to it when it starts up first thing in the morning. And just recognize how far you've come, and that how do we build our self-esteem? By treating ourselves nicely, by being kind, by giving ourselves a break and realizing I've gone through hell and I want to do something better for myself. That's the point I'd raise there. Over to either of you. I'll open up the floor.
I don't we all worry too much about what other people think.
Yeah.
And we never know what's going on. I mean, the reality is most people are actually stood there worrying about themselves, not you. And it's a completely different situation. But this sad story with Sarah Everard, we've all seen all over social media these women expressing the way they feel when they're walking alone at night and all of this fear. And the one thing that really struck me was actually reading someone else saying that they thought they were the only person to feel like that, and that they thought they were weird and unusual to feel this, and now they've read all of these other women saying that they feel it too, and realize that they're not different and they're not weird. I think that as well, you know, when you say stepping away from the superego, realizing that actually many other people in the room are feeling worried about themselves, and rather than looking at you and thinking, oh, look at her, they're actually thinking, oh, what do I look at, and worrying about their own insecurities. So standing strong and trying to repeat that mantra in your mind that other people are not worrying about you, they're worrying about themselves.
No, I totally agree. And in a twisted, weird, roundabout way, self-pity is a form of self-love. It's showing yourself attention, but also it's giving yourself a bit of a get-out clause. What we got to bear in mind is that voice, whatever it's saying to you, no matter how aggressive and abusive it is your voice. And if we know that, there's an element of us being able to take back control. The word power quite literally means the ability to do or act. In this situation, it may feel like you are powerless to how you feel, but I'm here to say you are not. And it's really a good opportunity for you to reclaim your power. And a big part of that is being able to step into vulnerability. Yes, showing up in the world, you know, in a way that you may not feel comfortable with yourself may be difficult. You may be scared about getting into a relationship because it might fail. And I'm not here to say that there's a guarantee that it'll work out perfectly, but I would definitely encourage you to look into Brené Brown, particularly check out her TED Talk on vulnerability. And I think this is a really powerful thing for all of us. Yeah, many of us are scared right now. Many of us are concerned. Our self-esteem, our confidence has been knocked. Very soon we're going to be told, yeah, it's safe, you can go back to the world. How many of us are going to struggle with that after spending a year you know, in solitary confinement or close to? So this is the thing. Yes, you might get hurt. You might get it wrong. It might not work out. You might not get to what you are hoping to achieve. But unless you're willing to put yourself out there and do your best, the chances are you'll find yourself in a self-perpetuating cycle. And a lot of people, out of fear or lack of confidence or lack of self-esteem, they don't do and they don't act. The phrase knowledge is power. Like a lot of these things, it's like, you know, you can get the knowledge, but knowledge, the phrase knowledge is power is actually a lie. It's not true. Knowledge is only power if you apply it or take action. So my suggestion would be, number one, look at that inner voice. Is it serving you? And if it's not, there are many things you can do with that voice. If it's being horrible or abusive or talking you out of a situation or preventing you from taking action, you have the power to change that voice. You can turn the volume down. You can make it sound like Donald Duck or Barry White. I promise you, if it sounds like Donald Duck, it's not going to have the same power when it's saying you're an idiot, you're pathetic, you know, you can't do this. It will sound stupid. You're going to laugh. But remember, you have that power because it's your voice. So part of this is, you know, number one, I appreciate you being willing and open enough to ask that question because it's tough when you're in that situation. But, you know, for me, the big thing is to reclaim your power, reclaim your ability to do or act. The word victim, if you look up in the dictionary, is someone that is powerless, someone that has no ability to do or act to change their circumstances. Now, based on what you've said, I don't believe that's the case. I think there is always something that we can do, no matter how challenging circumstances are. And I'm hoping through the clinics that we're running and the advice that we're able to give, we're able to help all of you to reclaim some sense of power and control over your circumstances. You might not be able to change what's going on outside of yourself, but you have the power to change how you choose to react and respond.
Thank you so much. I hope that's helpful. We've got a comment in on the live feed, but I'm just going to jump over to a question because I think it's quite relevant to this week, and then we'll go back to one from the live feed. Okay, since the proposed removal of the right to protest, I've been feeling I've got nowhere to put my feelings. I'm so angry. It's all me anxiety and anger that keeps looping round and round around my head, and I've been able to sleep. I'm getting increasingly distressed that we aren't going to be able to do anything at all at this rate, and I keep catastrophizing about the future and what we will and won't be able to do. And paradoxically, it's leaving me feeling agoraphobic. Yeah, I think I really relate to that. I'm going to hand it over to one of you guys because I've answered the last question first.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. You are not alone. I feel exactly the same way. And I think if we went around my lovely colleagues, they'd probably nod their heads too. This is something that I've shared a couple of times, one of my favorite quotes. There are two wolves, the wolf that makes you strong, the wolf that makes you weak. Which one are you going to feed? Now, all of these things that are happening around us in this crazy Black Mirror dystopian reality we find ourselves living in gives you an opportunity, it gives you fuel. Are you going to feed the wolf that makes you weak, that leaves you feeling angry, frustrated, despondent? Or are you going to feed the wolf that makes you strong, that puts you into action, where you are able to do something with that energy rather than leading to bitterness, anger, or cynicism? How are you going to apply that energy in a way that's going to help you, your community, and maybe society in general? That's partly the reason that, you know, I'm speaking on behalf of Juliet, Zoe, and many of our colleagues behind the scenes that you don't see here today. That's the reason we're doing what we do, because we were all angry and frustrated, and we wanted to do something, and we came together to really do what we can to help people. So what I would say to you is, yes, I feel you. I feel the same way. But what can you do with it? How can you help your family, your community, your society, your neighborhood? So we don't end up in a situation where we stood on the bylines where things changed around us and we did nothing. We want future generations to look back and think, thank you guys for what you did in that time. And this is where, you know, coming together with like-minded people, looking at how you can support your fellow family, colleagues, neighbors, etc., and how we can ensure that we are all, I was about to say fighting, I'm going to retract that, how we can all love for change. I know that sounds a bit hippie and woolly, but I don't think fighting is the answer. We need to come from a place of compassion, love, unconditional positive regard. We don't want to create more conflict and more polarity. So how we can use our positive energy and our love and our compassion to be able to ensure that we are able to get back to the world we all want to live in.
Thank you. Over to you, Juliet.
Yeah. The removal of our rights is a problem. I don't want to detract away from that. That is this person's problem, and it is a problem. However, in the moment, she or he, I'm not sure what you said, Zoe, is feeling that they're worrying about the future, they're overthinking. I think mindfulness is key here. You know, just to deal with the problem of the feelings at the moment, and really, if they don't know anything about mindfulness, doing whatever they can to read and research and put some practices into place, really trying to keep themselves in the moment rather than in the future or in the past. Some really simple practices, you know, meditation every day, using their senses every time thinking goes into overdrive, bringing themselves straight back to where they are. You know, what sounds can they hear around them? What can they smell around them? What can they see around them? Just continuously bringing themselves back to the moment.
Yeah, I think I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes all we can do is say to ourselves, right now, right here in the present moment, I'm safe, or just be here now. That's a good one as well, you know, because all of anxiety is about the future. As I will always say this as well, you know, what we can do is get the feelings out of our body. I say this all the time, I'm not boring with it, but I'm going to say it again. Expression is the opposite of depression, it's the opposite of anxiety, it's the opposite of like flipping out at, you know, family member or someone on the phone or someone in the street. We need to get this stuff out of our body, you know, and it can feel a bit embarrassing, you know, but you know, you can do this thing which is kind of like a healthy adult tantrum. You do it on your own and you it's just like punching a pillow, just getting that stuff out of your body, because you know, animals shake off stress and trauma and we don't, and you do feel like a bit of a dick, to be honest, when you do it, but sometimes you just need to. And we've been under this cosh for a year now, and we do have to get it out of our system somehow, and there isn't really anywhere for it to go. So you know, we don't want to be repressing it, drinking it, eating it. That's fine for a bit, but it's not a long-term strategy. So it is about finding ways to get the stress out of our system. But yeah, I fully empathize. I think we all do, you know. It's kind of like, you know, we're not meant to live like this, are we? We are not meant to live like this. I'm just going to respond to a question from the live feeds that came in, and we had Paula coming saying, fantastic to be here this evening. How would you best advise to switch off after a hard therapy session about childhood trauma and not replaying events over and over in your head? Thank you for your time. Thank you, Paula. So, well, by changing the subject, actually, you know, because the whole point of therapy is you go in and you're doing that, especially if you're working deeply on some kind of trauma or childhood events, adverse experiences. You know, I would also say this as well, when I work with clients, I don't know about you, Juliet, but when I work with sort of inner child work, then where the people are often processing for a couple of days afterwards. So you might find there's a natural part of that is just you processing. So I often say to clients, let yourself feel however you're feeling. You know, if you don't feel lighter in a couple of days, you know, you don't feel lighter straight away, you might feel lighter in a couple of days. But I think give yourself permission to feel however you're feeling. If you keep going over and over and over something, give yourself something, I would use, you know, like Juliet's mindfulness tips, give yourself something lo-fi, low-key and supportive and nurturing to do that is kind and supportive to yourself, that isn't going to be a distraction that sort of gives you some sort of hangover the next day. And when I say hangover, I don't just mean an alcohol hangover, I mean, you know, anything really. We can give ourselves emotional hangovers and all sorts of things. So maybe journaling a bit, getting some more of that out, maybe talking to somebody that's safe, maybe just letting your subconscious know, okay, I've done the work, might be processing, I can let that go now, and changing the subject in a gentle way. Gentle escapism is always a really good thing. I don't know if either of you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to get a little bit more context. I appreciate we may not have that, but having seen the question as well, that I totally agree with what Zoe said, that it's important to give yourself the space to express that emotion. Emotion comes up and our natural reaction is to suppress it or avoid it or placate it in some way. But the emotions come up for a reason, and allow it to get expressed, because once it's worked its way through, you don't have to worry about it again. If you suppress it, it's going to come back. However, I'd also totally appreciate there are times that emotion comes up and it's not easy, possible, or practical to deal with it, because you may, I don't know, have to go to work, you may have to deal with your children. There may be other factors that prevent you from literally going deeper into that emotion. If that is the case, and for anyone that's finding that they're being overwhelmed by emotion and they're really struggling with that, there's a piece of advice that I would give that could be a useful tool in the toolbox. And in psychology, it's known as a pattern interrupt. So a pattern interrupt, if someone's having a proper freak out, it's like, you may have seen this, but they would slap them to...
That's an airplane, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They're lining up to... Now, I'm not talking about an actual physical slap, but there are ways that you can give yourself a proverbial slap. So one of my powerful pattern interrupts, not for everyone, but it works really well for a number of different reasons. I get in the shower and I put it on the coldest it will go. And I live in an area where the mains water is literally ice cold, even in the summer. And it doesn't matter what's going on in my head, I cannot reconnect to those thoughts again at all when I've had a cold shower, because I'm too busy being bloody cold. But there's a secondary benefit. What does cold do? It puts you into a state of like immediate shock. It shocks the system in the same way a slap would. But here's the interesting thing. When you have cold showers, it's a controlled stress release. You're forcing your body into stress. But the moment you come out of the shower, guess what happens? You're not stressed anymore, right? Because you've gone from extreme stress to like, oh, I'm not in shock anymore. And your body will then start to warm up. And one of the reasons that the cold showers are really powerful, not only is it great for the immune system, but it's actually really good to build stress resilience. So I totally appreciate this may not be directly the context of your question, but it could be a useful way if you're struggling and you need to snap out of it. You could have the nice, long, hot, slow bath. But if you want that immediate snap, you know, it could be put some loud music on and have a dance. You could be that you go outside in the cold and get some fresh air. It could be you have a cold shower, or just splash cold water in your face if you're not possible to have a shower. But it's just important, again, going back to this point, the theme that's building here today, which is about empowerment. What can I do to take back control? Part of that control could be the expression of the emotion, but part of it could be, if I need to stop this for whatever reason, I have tools to be able to do so.
State changes, isn't it, really? I love that. Do you know what? I've never done a cold shower in my life, and the thought of it is like hell. Probably, you want people that get up in the morning and get like a cold shower. It's like, oh my God, it's just masochist.
It's all the rage. It's all the rage at the moment.
I know. Some people say swear by it, but the people have really recovered. I mean, you know, I don't think, you know, I know you say it's kind of, it's not a big thing in a way, but I think I've read so many stories of people who, that's how their journey to sort of healing and recovery from really big things began, with just doing the cold showers.
There's a guy called Wim Hof. It's someone that you can
Oh,
find very
that's it,
easily
yeah.
online. He does this kind of breathing technique, and the last bit of it is to get in an ice cold shower. I did the course with him, and at the end of the program, you basically get in a bath filled with ice. So
Oh,
filled with ice cubes and a little bit of water so the ice doesn't freeze. And it's so cold, it's hot, if that makes sense. You feel like your body's on fire, that you get out and you feel like someone set you alight, even though it's cold. But the interesting thing is that what it's doing is building tolerance. Right now, we're living in extraordinary times with extraordinary circumstance. We all need to consider how we can build our tolerance, our resilience to cope with this excessive pressure. Because I don't care what your coping mechanisms are, we've all been challenged by this situation. Now, as crazy as it sounds, what's going to happen? The cold shower is going to create more stress, but there's immediate relief. Because the moment you get out, it's like, oh my God, it's not cold anymore.
are we going to have to be working off to over burning coals in another few months if it carries on?
You feel warm. The rest of the day you feel even warmer because your body has started to adapt.
Yeah.
And what will happen is, like, when you do the course, it's a 10-day course. At the end of it, it's in Poland in the winter, and you climb a mountain. It's an average minus 25, minus 30 degrees. You do it in your underwear. Now, so you've been threatening to get on a horse and do your Lady Godiva. Maybe you could kind of adapt it to kind of climbing the mountain in your lingerie, just for building your resilience.
He climbed Everest in his shorts, didn't he, Wim Hof?
Yeah, he also ran a marathon in the Arctic Circle, butt naked.
Yeah.
And it was like minus 35. And the doctor said he would die. It's not possible. But again, this is
the power of belief.
Mind over matter, hey?
Yeah, the power of belief.
Partly mind over matter, but a big part of it is to understand how we can. There's a big field of biohacking. And biohacking is looking at how we can literally re-engineer the way that our bodies function. Now, given the fact that we're in a world which is, the only real kind of reference point is Will Smith films. We've talked about this before. The virus is going to turn everyone into zombies, and then the aliens are going to attack. So it's like I Am Legend and Independence Day. I love a good Hollywood reference. The point is, like, this is a crazy time. So we need to consider really extraordinary course of action to ensure that we're strong enough to be able to cope, because
that are safe. Yeah. Extraordinary and safe. Yeah, and they're really good things. It's great as well because it brings another element into it. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand this one over to Juliet because I think it's really important. I was holding everything together for over a year until what happened last week. This lady is obviously talking about Sarah, and now it's triggered an old event for me, and I'm feeling incredibly unsafe. I can't stop shaking. I keep having flashbacks. What can I do about these? I thought they had gone after I worked for a long time with a therapist using EMDR, and that really helped me. But now it feels like they are back and more vicious than ever.
Go to another therapist. Not a different therapist. I don't mean that the other therapist was bad or there was any problems, but go and see someone again. Yeah, absolutely. Go and see someone again. I think, Zoe, you mentioned journaling before with one of the other questions. Journaling could be really helpful, and maybe some positive affirmations based on personal safety, or being safe. I am safe, I keep myself safe, I'm strong and I'm capable of staying safe. Positive affirmations that are repeated daily. But if there has been some previous trauma, which it sounds like there clearly has been something happen, and this has reignited that trauma, if she has the ability to go and see a therapist, then definitely. If not, there's the likes of the Samaritans out there which can be phoned for free. But with serious trauma, I mean, I really think you have to see someone, an experienced person, because it is a big deal.
Yeah, and you need to be held. And there's something else I want to say as well about recovery. We can, when we've gone through complex PTSD or severe trauma, adverse childhood experience, or adult experiences, we can do this work. And I see this all the time in practices, that we do this work and we think, okay, that's it, that's done now. Okay, I'm healed and resolved and never come back. But recovery isn't like that. Recovery isn't linear. I say this to everybody all the time. I always say the same things. Recovery is kind of so jagged, and we can have these great big periods when we're in our sort of window of tolerance, if you like. We're feeling well. Okay, I've got that now. So I've thought I dealt with that. People always say to me, I thought I dealt with that. you know, when we're under, you know, we've been under a lot of stress anyway, and when we have a shock, it sends us back into the freeze response, and then we go into that trauma response. And it's not that you know, have gone back to square one. I hear this all the time, and that's not what's said in this email, but I know that so many people end up feeling like this. I've gone back to square one, nothing's changed, I haven't recovered. And it's like, it's not like that. You know, recovery isn't that we never go back there. It's just that we go back there for a day rather than a week rather than a month rather than a year rather than a lifetime, you know. So I want you to be really kind to yourself about the fact that, you know, something big has happened. Big events do trigger you know, big world events really trigger huge things in us, especially if the subconscious doesn't know. It's a huge generalizer, doesn't know the difference between our story and someone else's, and also we're in empathy and all of those things. So I agree, get the support that you can, if you can,
something
a therapist. Yeah.
And also in the moment, yoga, great for trauma. Maybe it's difficult at the moment. Then, you know, exercise classes will be starting back soon, but just, you know, some classes online, yoga stuff online, EFT, another thing that could be used at home. You know, a few things that can be used at home to help feelings in the moment, whilst maybe seeing a therapist at the same time.
And whatever you can do to make yourself feel safe people, safe things, safe films, safe books, safe practices, you know, safety. And you will come out of that flight freeze response. But, you know, it just, you know, recognizes right now and triggered. The most thing that sometimes when we're really triggered, all we can do is go, right, okay, I'm really, really triggered. And I will come down and maybe detach from reading about it as well. Sometimes we just we can get a bit addicted and obsessed in a, you know, it's funny, when we're triggered, we tend to sort of go towards the source of our trigger and read more about it and get a bit obsessed, because it's that flight response of like, I need to find out more information to do something more about it. And it feeds it, and it doesn't help. It doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you're protecting yourself.
That's so key, actually, Zoe. I think that is spot on. You know, switch the news off completely, switch off social media completely, and just, you know, even 10 days out, no news. And that means deleting the news app from mobile devices as well, you know, just completely coming off it, and then just focusing on what you see with your own eyes. Because actually when everyone else's story is taken away and you're just looking around you, the world seems a much calmer, happier, nicer kind of place.
Totally agree. You know, at the end of the day, you will develop a worldview and a picture and a perspective on the world based on what you see and read on social media, on mainstream media. The reality is, it's only real if it's real for you. Go and experience the world for yourself, not based on what people are telling you to believe. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we're facing today, is the fact that our opinions, thoughts and beliefs are being shaped by what we read and hear on mainstream media, social media, etc. That is one perspective. That is not necessarily your perspective. It's kind of, you know, I've mentioned this a couple of times before about my campaign to get the movie The Matrix reclassified as non-fiction, because very much the world that we live in today. You know, every time you go onto social media, every time you go onto the internet, every time you watch television, you're going into this image, this perspective, this illusion of reality. There is a beautiful wide world out there, and I think we need to go back and re-experience that with our own senses. And I know we're limited by what we can do, who we can do it with, and where we can do it. But it's really important that we start to form our own opinions and perspectives based on our direct evidence. Use yourself as a sample group of one. And I think that's a really important thing, rather than basing it on what you are being told to believe.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, I have severe anxiety about the prospect of vaccine passports and COVID certification because I don't want to be vaccinated. It's personal choice. I am terrified. I won't be able to go anywhere or do anything. I want to travel, move out of the UK. That's important to me. How do I deal with this anxiety that is taking over my life and at times leaving me feeling unable to cope and continue with life? Well, I think we've got to understand that we're in really shifting sands. You know, we hear new things every single day. You know, that some countries are allowing people to be unvaccinated, some places aren't. Things are changing all the time. So, you know, can't give sort of practical advice on all that stuff, obviously, because it's so unstable, isn't it, really, at the moment? But I'm going to hand over to either Juliet or Neil, actually, because I've spoken quite a lot already, in terms of like how to deal and cope with that emotionally, because it's a tricky one, isn't it? So we're all feeling that a bit.
Yeah, there's two ways to look at this. So firstly, our friends Save Our Rights are working on the Medical Freedom Bill, which is doing they're doing their very best to prevent ourselves finding ourselves in a situation where that becomes entrenched or enshrined in law. Well, there's a key point here that, as Mahatma Gandhi said, 90% of the thing we worry about never come to pass. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have one eye on what could happen and ensure that we're putting ourselves in a position of power to be able to act in a responsible, appropriate, and, as Zoe said many times, in a safe way, to ensure that that doesn't become a restriction placed on us. But equally, I think investing a huge amount of emotional energy and getting worried and anxious about something that hasn't happened yet may not be the most effective way to direct your attention and your energy. So yeah, okay, this is a concern. How can we commit our time and energy to ensuring that we are not having to face restrictions, but equally how you're not finding yourself getting anxious, overwhelmed, and despondent about something that hasn't happened yet. There's a potential it will, but also we're now starting to hear, as Zoe said, countries that are saying that's not going to be the case. And I genuinely hope that we don't get to that point. And also, if there's a sense that that's going to happen, that all the people that are working hard to prevent that from happening are able to really ensure that there is a balanced and fair debate and discussion. And, ultimately our human rights are protected. For me, that is absolutely the most important thing. From a personal perspective, Julia, have you got anything that you could offer as advice for an individual that's feeling anxious about the concerns around this?
Yeah. I'm not going to hide my opinion from this. I'm completely pro-choice. So I've been following this, and it's interesting actually, because so this is advice that I am taking and doing myself. I watched the debate, or I kind of skipped through the debate, Parliament debate about this, and it's really reassuring to hear lots of people at that debate, lots of MPs actually saying that they don't want vaccine passports. So it's quite reassuring that's reassuring to hear. There's a lot of people fighting to not have them. I think something that's really important to recognise is that a bigger problem for me personally is not that our country necessarily creating vaccine passports, is that the countries that may not let us in without a vaccination. And so that, vaccine passports are potentially just a response to countries, ease at airports and things like that. If they start to be taken into account in this country to attend events and things, then that's another larger problem. But I feel, again, switching off from the news, because I think news headlines give a really incorrect idea of what's going on. And the headline might be, Greece will let Britons in if they're vaccinated, when the reality is Greece, I believe, will let people in if they are vaccinated or they've had a negative COVID test, and that isn't necessarily going to have some vaccine passport. Now, okay, it still may have to have a test. But I now know of 3 travel companies that are kind of pro-choice travel companies, and so there are companies out there that are going to be providing travel to places that will accept people in without a vaccination. So I think it's about being creative, and maybe there might be places that you cannot go without a vaccination or a negative COVID test. That might just be the way it is, not necessarily down to our country, but down to the other countries. And maybe people who choose not to have the vaccination have to just be a little bit more creative and innovative with those kind of choices. And I think you just said, Neil, or maybe we said before, not to worry about things that haven't happened yet.
Yeah.
Keep yourself updated with the facts, not the news headlines. And just rest and wait. We're prevented from going anywhere at the moment anyway.
Yeah.
So you know,
it's a bit of a surrender job. And yeah, I think your advice is really sound, Julia. Actually, I think it's kind of like there's many, I'm pro-choice too, and I think it's really important that people have it, and I think there's many people that will be, and I think that it's really easy to go into like a real flight response of like at least locked in here, because of what we could read on social media and everything else, but we just don't know yet. And there will be ways, of like you said, of being able to have choice and some freedom, maybe limited, but there will be ways.
There's a really beautiful piece of advice that I would offer to anyone that's feeling this way, is the serenity prayer. It's used every day in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I think it has many broader applications. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. Beautiful. So on that, it's just like a nice segue into the next question, actually, which is, hi, any advice on how to manage suicidal ideation? I lost my best friend to suicide last year. I'm very sorry. And I haven't been coping since. I've locked myself away. It's a constant battle with myself to be here. It's getting really exhausting. Thanks. Well, no wonder. We're not meant to grieve and deal with all of that alone. It sounds like I'm reading between the lines here, but it sounds like you might have just lost somebody really important, a really heartbreaking, traumatic experience, your best friend, lost them in a really tragic way as well. And then, of course, we haven't been able to sort of express, grieve, process or regulate ourselves in the same way. I don't know how much support you've had. I can't tell from the email. There is, Neil, this one, don't you? The grief counselling service that is free of charge. And who are they again? Just remind me.
CRUSE. If you look up Cruise online.
Cruise. Okay, so if you are not in touch with them, then I would suggest that. I'd also suggest getting support in some way. I don't know if you have a therapist, you can afford a therapist. I'm not sure what your situation is. Maybe you can let us know. Then we can advise a bit more sort of practically. But you're not meant to just lock your, this is what we do. We go through something awful, and then, we just sort of isolate and withdraw and just go, oh, I'm just meant to deal with this on my own. The things that we expect of ourselves, we would never expect of anyone else. Just locking ourselves away. There's no way you should be locking yourself away dealing with a devastating heartbreak. It's your best friend. And the constant battle is probably because, there's part of you that's screaming out, listen to me, let me grieve, let me be supported, let me get help, let me express what's going on. So I think all of that is really important to realize. You need more support, you need more expression, and you need to be able to be held while you grieve. Sometimes we can't grieve until we're held, and don't always mean physically held, I mean emotionally held. Someone holding that space for us. Sometimes the grief is just too painful for us to even begin feeling until there's someone else there that's able to support us in a safe way to enable us to grieve. I'll work with people who they will present with something, an anxiety issue, and actually it's to do with somebody they lost 30 years ago. And they say it was 30 years ago, and I said, it doesn't matter. Your subconscious mind doesn't understand time, and they only start grieving when we start working together, because they've got someone else to help hold it. So that's what I would say about that.
Zoe, can I just double check? Obviously, there's two parts to that. Obviously, there's the brief, and thank you so much for responding to that part, which is really important. But am I correct in saying that there was also concerns around suicide ideation as well?
Yes. Sorry, I focused on the grief.
Yeah. If I may pick up the first part of that question, every thought and feeling is valid. And right now you're looking at a brick wall and not seeing a way to be able to get over that. The grief can be overwhelming, and obviously is always giving some really fantastic advice on ways that you can really start to allow yourself to go into the grief process. But ultimately, when you're staring at a brick wall and you can see no way over that, you can start thinking in a very fatal way, and literally getting to the point where you're considering taking a permanent solution to a temporary problem. But let me be clear, it is a temporary problem. Now, you've identified one choice that you have available to you, which is to check out. I'm not here to take that choice away from you, but I'm asking you to consider, what other choices do you have? What else could you do? How else could you address this situation? Because you know, the thoughts you have, there's no going back from that. There are other ways that you could be able to look at how you face this, and it's not easy. And I know when you're facing something like this, and having been there myself personally, and also knowing people that have tragically lost their lives in exactly the same way that you've described that your friend did, it can bring up those feelings. But this is about choice. You have many choices in front of you. As we said earlier, power is the ability to react. You've identified one course of action. What else could you do? How else could you address this? Who could you talk to if you can't see the wood for the trees yourself? How could you change your state? What could you do with your daily routine that quite literally shakes things up? Because when we are struggling mentally and emotionally, we are spending a lot of time in our heads, and we're stuck with these repetitive thoughts, these fears, these concerns, these emotions are coming up, and it's very much in here and in here. And we're not connecting to what's real in this moment, the reality of this moment as it is. So actually, this is not just going to talk to the viewer that was willing to be vulnerable about her issues with grief and suicidal ideation. I think it's something that's going to be beneficial to everyone. I'm going to just share with you a little exercise to get you into your body. It literally takes 2 minutes, but it's a really great way to get you out of your head. And let's just do a little bit of an experiment together, right? We're going to literally do this for 2 minutes before we wrap up with the final questions. But it's something that I'm hoping will show you how quickly you can trip the switch and flick from mental and emotional state to physical state. So what we're going to do not quite a pattern interrupt hard slap, but we're going to do some body slapping. This is going to sound stupid, but those of you that have been following the series, we always have a Neil moment, right? So this is the Neil moment, right? We're going to do something a bit, what feels strange, but there's power in this. These are all kind of tried and tested sort of strategies. So what we're literally going to do, we are literally going to spend a couple of minutes just slapping our bodies. Now, I want you to slap to the point where you're almost about to bruise yourself, right? You want to feel it. You want to feel the connection with your body. Not to the point you're actually drawing blood or creating bruises, but almost there, right? So literally, we're just going to slap around the body. Let's see what happens. So before we do this, just survey the landscape. How do you feel in your body? How does the room look? You know, kind of how are myself and my colleagues looking, and how does that change as we do this exercise, right? So what we are going to do, we are going to put a little soundtrack on to accompany us with this silly little exercise. Silly, but it might work, right? You just, until you're willing to experiment, you'll never know. All right, ready? So take your hand and we slap. And you guys have to sit there. You can't sit there. You're gonna have to slap too. Well, so slap your shoulders. All right, slap down your arms.
I'm doing it on my legs.
Turn over, slap. Jordan, I can see you. You need to be slapping too. Slap the chest. Sides.
What does this do, Neil? I want to know what this does. It stimulates the nervous system.
It was a cold shower, Zoe.
That's what, sorry?
It was a cold shower.
Yeah.
It's on the face. Head. And just finish, put your hands over your eye sockets. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. That's my best example of a pattern interrupt. I do that every morning for at least 10 minutes. And no matter what you're feeling, it will get you out of your head and into your body.
Do you do it while you're in the cold shower or out of it?
No, I do it before the cold shower because I'm nice and sweaty before I get in the cold shower.
It's good. It's a good intervention for the inner critic as well. I want to say as well about suicidal ideation. It's pain, you know, it's something I want to say about it. Obviously, it's really vital that you get support with it. It's vital. But also, it's acknowledging it within yourself that this is pain that hasn't been expressed. This is pain turned inward. Suicidal ideation, I think, you know, is pain that is turned inward. So that pain needs to be released and expressed and acknowledged and honoured, and then it can begin to heal. It's got nowhere to go. It's got nowhere to go at the moment. We're in lockdown, hasn't been expressed. It's had nowhere to go. So then it circulates around the system. And when things don't come out of the body and come out of our mouths, they become really noxious. They do.
And if you need further support, I would encourage you to contact Samaritans that are well equipped to be able to help you to make sense of that situation.
Juliet, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think really only it's okay to ask for help, even from friends, family. Like, people want to help, and I think so often people just don't feel able to. They don't feel that they're worthy of that.
Yeah, I think that is, and it's really important. And the thing is as well, it's kind of like, if we're going to wait to feel worthy to do things, we're going to wait to believe in ourselves, we'll never do it. We just got to do it anyway, and then the feeling ultimately comes. That's the thing. I think it's really important. Sometimes we just need to act as if. Well, we're nearly out of time, guys. Is there anything else that you want to add before we finish? Let's see if there's any more comments on the live feed from anybody.
So I think, the closing comments from me, that every week it seems to be there's an additional layer of complexity and anxiety and trauma that's being added to what's already been a very, very tough time. There's a lot of people that are being compromised and marginalized. Obviously, over the last week, there's a lot of women that are feeling very unsafe and have been persecuted for their, expressing their right to express their grief, basically. And for me, that's wrong. It was no different to what happened last year with the racial protest following the tragic death of George Floyd. There's a lot of people from the Black community and ethnic minorities in general that, again, don't feel safe. And it's a word that's always used a lot this evening, is there are many of us that don't feel safe. And we are living in a society that's perpetuating that fear. And the reality is that, yes, people can project images and ideas to put you into fear, but you have to choose that option. It may well be a subconscious choice. I'm not saying you choose to go into fear, but you do have a choice not to react to that fear. That's why some people can, get in the water with sharks or walk around when tigers are in the open and not be in fear. And what's interesting is fear becomes a hook for more fear. And many of us are getting stuck in these kind of perpetuating cycles. So this is where, as I said, we live in a world that is exacerbating the fear, which is basically putting us in, as has been described many times, into this, many of us in the freeze state where we're debilitated by fear. So what can we do to take ourselves out of fear and in a place where we can take back power and control of our circumstance?
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, Juliet. It's been really good.
Thank you for having
Lovely
me.
having your lovely energy on here. It's been great. I want everybody to take as best care of themselves as we live in this intensely crazy, increasingly crazy world. And sometimes we just need to stand back with a bit of detachment and go, oh my God, it keeps going up a notch. At some point, it will go down a notch.
So we will be back next week. Obviously, this only works if we have your questions and you guys watching. And
send them in and pop them on the live feeds. We try and answer everything. Just whatever's going on for you, and we keep it anonymous, obviously. So we want to be able to support. So start sending your questions in from now.
And just one last thing I wanted to add, that myself, Zoe, Felix, and also Julia, we're all volunteering. We make no money out of this. We are using some of our donations to be able to fund these workshops, so these clinics. And we're getting to the point now, we've made a commitment to run this till the end of Stress Awareness Month, which is April. So we really need your help. So if anyone can support us by making a donation, however small, it doesn't cost us much to run them, but you can go to timeforrecovery.org and you'll find out details about all the different work that we're doing. If there's any way you can help us and support us to continue to run these, it's always appreciated. So your donations are really welcome. Thank you.
Great. Have a good as week as possible. Take care.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See you next week.